why?
So I'm supporting Bernie Sanders for president. And I just want to take one step. The committeeman is, well, I don't even know if he's right, but I understand what he's saying, that the chances, the odds are that Hillary's going to win. I believe very strongly that you vote your conscience. You vote what is right. You vote for who you think is the best for the position. I'm not going to vote for what I think is going to win. I vote for what is right and what's best for our country. So that's number one. The reason why I'm supporting Bernie is he's tapped into an issue that no one is tapped into, and that's the economic issue. The Democrats have abandoned the middle class, the lower class, and the term poverty, poor people. There hasn't been a national Democrat that's even said those words in years. They're completely abandoned. And we have rising rates of poverty. We have a shrinking middle class. And Bernie has tapped in to that philosophy. We can pay for college education for everyone in this country. Don't believe the lies about it. We absolutely can pay for it. It's very easy, it's very doable, and it's the best investment we can ever make as a country. So those are the things that are very important to me. Those are the things that are very important to Bernie, and that's why I'm supporting him. That being said, Trump, you know, we can't have that. We can't have that. So whoever wins, obviously, I'll be participating and voting for Hillary.
Aaron and I don't obviously agree on a lot of things, but we do on this issue. I also support Bernie. I think that maybe old gray-haired people should have a shot to stay in for a little longer, okay?
If I had my drum set with me, you know, I do one of the things. You know, I usually travel with it, but
he is exciting, and he's not afraid. And matter of fact, he's got 27 of my dollars, because that was his. What he said his average fundraising was $27. He got a check from me for $27. Okay, so I think that in fact that he's bringing in fact a needed conversation to. Has anybody raised their hand out there saw The Big Short? Okay, does that terrify you? Yeah. Don't you believe that anybody making over $250,000 a year that worked for Goldman Sachs should be in jail? I passed, when I was alderman, I passed a ordinance with 48 votes that said keep Chicago running, where the big banks were coming in and throwing people out as soon as they took title. They had a family in our community with two Hispanic families in a two-flat that had lived there, one for 13 years and one for 6 years, and had their children part of the school system. And the owner of the building, when he in fact rented the property to the 13, he owed $120,000 on the property. And then the funny money came, and he refinanced, and he borrowed $450,000 more on the property. Nobody in the bank asked him how he was going to pay for it. And he walked on it, and the bank came in and gave them a notice as soon as they took over to get out. That's the scary thing that goes on in this country. Look at the companies in today's paper who had the biggest revenue, and it was all the big banks. And that's my fear as much as Trump is my fear. The big banks are my fear also.
You want to take another minute on that, Aaron?
Sure. All right.
Aaron, get a chance to respond. Yeah.
Money in politics is a crucial issue. Corporations and big companies, big banks being involved in politics is a very big issue, and we could take it home locally. Privatization is a big big issue in the city, and it's a big issue nationwide. And I'm ashamed to say that the city of Chicago is leading the march to privatizing everything, and that really started with one very distinct thing that my opponent gladly voted for, and that was the parking meter deal. So in 72 hours, he read the deal and felt it was a good deal, and that was at least $1 billion shortfall. So now teachers are being laid off. Now people can't, their pensions aren't being paid because we're in this huge shortfall because of the privatization. So Bernie has tapped into that, and my opponent voted for the biggest boondoggle this city has ever seen.
Dick, you want to respond to that?
Guilty as charged. I did, unfortunately. It came to us at the last minute. It was a thing to supposedly have enough shortfall money to be able to use. Unfortunately, that set-aside money was never used. What it was, it came back for the next budget and was used for the next budget rather than balancing the budget. They dipped into that money that we were supposed to have from that deal. So it's unfortunate.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Do you want to?
No, that's good.
This?
Sure.
You sure? You sound like you were done, so, you know.
Yeah, I'm done on that.
Dick, go ahead and keep the microphone here.
Sure.
What have you learned, good or bad, about party politics from being involved in your own campaigns?
One of the reasons, what I liked about this ward and what I liked about the people in this ward is that we have a ward that is probably, I at one time said that if you drew a circle around Lawrence and Kedzie in a 2-mile circle, you had, I figured out we had, I think it was 70 nationalities and I think about 36 languages spoken. It is truly America, and it's an opportunity to see some of the people that live in Ravenswood Manor who do very, very well, and some of the people who are just barely eking out a living. Okay. So politics here, I think, is a microcosm of the whole city. I remember being in this same place with the lady from the Korean lady who we gave away 1,000 jackets, coats for the winter in this area, and it was right next to Ravenswood Manor. We did coat drives all the time in our ward, and a lot of them came from the manor for people that lived in our community. We do have a shrinking opportunity for the middle class in this country. I had the opportunity to start a company manufacturing springs for the automotive industry. My wife, in her wisdom, kicked me out of the company and made a real business out of it. And I saw what was happening. We were doing business with the big 3 automakers. And all of a sudden, I was a second tier. I was making the springs for the switch manufacturers. But I was told by my customers that I should look to relocate a business in China. And at that point, my wife became unfortunately ill, and we just got out of the business. But that's what's happened. Big business has driven the people. Just, I'm using my time, so take it away from the next time if you would, if you don't mind. If I do that.
I'm keeping close track.
Okay, thanks. Look what Chicago used to be. Look at what used to happen. If you were a tool maker, you could lose a job, and within 5 hours find another company. Shaw Walker. I mean, we've lost Stuart Warner. I just can go through the areas in our ward that we lost good paying jobs where there was 2 people in the family. Right now, I can tell you families where the husband is working 2 jobs and the wife is working 2 jobs, and unfortunately nobody's watching the kids. And that is the crime of America.
All right, Mr. Mellon, we'll cut you off right there. Please, Aaron, if you could take the microphone again. The question was, what have you learned, good or bad, about party politics from your campaign?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh, too kind. I wish we can go back 10, 20, 30 years and talk to the alderman of the 33rd Ward so we could have made sure some of these things didn't happen to our ward. As far as party politics, the concern I have running my campaign and going through this campaign is that they are too much in favor of the incumbent, too much in favor of making sure they maintain the power. So anyone that wants to jump into the race and they have a good idea or several good ideas and they want to be a part of the process, it's just this instant reflex from the party to do everything they can to destroy that opponent. Whether it's try and kick them off the ballot, whether it's send nasty mailers, and I'm sure in the next forum that you all are in front of or will watch, you'll see and you'll hear about the mailers that you see. You know, not to talk about our next race, but Harish Patel is going through just absolutely ridiculous flyers, and these are funded by not only his opponent, but by the Democratic Party establishment. And quite frankly, they're racist. And it's despicable. It's absolutely despicable. If you have an issue with your opponent on the issues, say it. Say what the issue is. Don't say things that you know aren't true. Don't disparage that person, and then don't take all the money from the big party to disparage that person. This is a discussion of ideas. Whoever has the best ideas in the voters' minds should win. It shouldn't be about destroying that other person, and that's the problem of what the party does. God forbid a young person wants to challenge the incumbent and have a nice debate and discussion about those ideas. And then all of a sudden, hell hath no fury. The money and the workers and the slander that goes on to destroy that opponent is just downright offensive. And that's, I think, the real problem with the party politics.
40 years, never ever once ever mentioned, ever had a negative flyer that I've ever produced. Never once had a slanderous, never talked about my opponent in another way, always was concerned about myself. But also it's very interesting that I heard my opponent today say about how people kick people off the ballot, try to kick them off. He challenged my petitions. He tried to kick me off the ballot. He, in fact, challenged my petitions. It was a frivolous challenge, only to create me to hire an attorney to defend it. It was thrown out. It was a joke. But he actually challenged my petitions. So there you are.
Aaron, could you respond to that?
For 40 years, he's been a candidate, and he said he always focused on himself. He focused on himself because he didn't run opposed. He ran unopposed because he would kick off the people off the ballot. Damn right I challenged him because I knew exactly what he would be doing. I knew exactly how he works. He challenges people, he kicks people off the ballot. He had to hire an attorney. The attorney he had is funded by the Cook County Democratic Party. Okay, he didn't have to, the poor committeeman didn't have to go in the kitty to pay an attorney. I withdrew my challenge, and that's what happened. So
it was a frivolous challenge.
It wasn't a frivolous challenge. I decided to withdraw it. I decided to withdraw it. How did? Well, it wasn't a frivolous challenge. Nonetheless, I did challenge him, and I own up to it. And here's something that the Democratic Party doesn't do, is they get someone, okay, just like what your daughter did in the aldermanic race, you get someone that's not affiliated with the campaign, so it's just some random name to challenge that person. I put my name on that challenge. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I don't run away from it. Mr. Mell has not had an opponent for decades because he knows how to get people off the ballot. Of course he focuses on himself, because he never runs against anyone.
Mr. Mell, let's move on to another question here. So, you know, the Mell family name, very powerful name here in Chicago. It's, you know, for decades. I want to ask, for those who have expressed concern that your daughter's the alderman, you're running for committeeman, perhaps there's a conflict of influence, conflict of interest, and perhaps too much family in one ward. What is your response?
Well, this will, you know, be interesting because, in fact, I talked to Deborah, and I think, you know, I'm kind of happy with what she's doing. I think she's being independent. She's so independent of me that she moved out of the office that we had and really is on her own. And I told her, in the next election, I'm not going to endorse anybody. She's going to be on her own, and she realizes that. She has to, in fact, to be able to stand on her own, and she knows that. So this election of mine, see, some people run for office thinking about 3 years from now for running for another office. That's not here. Deborah will run on her own, Deborah will win on her own, or Deborah will lose on her own. I guarantee here that you will not see the 33rd Ward endorsing her, 33rd Ward helping finance her, the 33rd Ward doing anything, that she has to stand on her own. And so, you know, 40 years is a long time, correct, you know. And I still believe that I can do a good job, and I'm going to continue to try to do it.
Thank you. Aaron, again, I'll just rephrase the question. Are you concerned that there's a conflict of interest, that one family would, you know, be from the committeeman and alderman from the same ward and same family?
Just to give a little background on committeeman, many times the alderman is also the committeeman. It's typically a joint held spot, just like with Mr. Mell. Is there a conflict? I don't think necessarily in that specific context there's a conflict. There are concerns that I have. I think it's a bigger conflict that Mr. Mell's a lobbyist, okay, as well as his daughter's the alderman, as well as he's the committeeman. That's a bigger conflict of interest that I'm concerned with. That being said, as far as being a committeeman, here are some concerns I have as far as the conflict of interest. So the last race was an aldermanic race. I'm not here to say who should have won, who didn't win, or whatever. But what I did know as a poll watcher is the committeeman is walking into the polling places, giving candy and pizza and chips and sandwiches to the election judges. And on one level, that's a good service because the judges are working hard, they're getting paid very little, and you try and give them some food, and I understand that. But on another level, these judges now have to make important decisions. And they have to make important decisions about the daughter of the individual that just gave them food and just took care of them. Okay? We think that they're going to have the integrity to make the decisions they need to make, and most of the time they do. But why even have that air of conflict? Why go into the polling places? Why have your people, who are the same people that the alderman's people are, being out there handing out flyers, walking into the polling place, handing out flyers in the polling place? It's really the air, the impression people have, even if there is no true conflict. That's a big concern. So when you're the lobbyist, you're the committeeman, your daughter's the alderman, your longtime chief of staff's the state rep. Now, even if there's no conflict, even if we think they're completely independent players, what do the voters think? They think it's just a family dynasty, and that's what we want to avoid.
Mr. Mell, if you could respond, please, 1 minute.
Yeah, I think that, in fact, that the alderman today, when I first got elected as committeeman, there were very few aldermen who were committeemen. If you think about Richard J. Daley, he was not an alderman. George Dunn, the president of the county board, was a committeeman. The third most powerful man in the Congress, Dan Rostenkowski, was a committeeman. Very few aldermen were committeemen. Today, almost every alderman is a committeeman. And probably after this election, some of the new aldermen are all running for committeeman. So if it's a conflict of to be the committeeman and the alderman. My daughter, if she chose to run for committeeman, I would not have ran. But she chose not to be one of the same. She chose not to be, and knowing full well that I told her that I was not going to be